40-0. The Cowboys absolutely curb stomped the Giants in week 1. The Giants were way better than anyone expected a year ago. Brian Daboll came in and immediately turned them into a competent team and even won a playoff game for the first time in over a decade. It was glorious, but that was probably the best case scenario. Now it's time for the Giants to return back to reality, and if week 1 was any sign of what is to come, it's ugly. Now, it really didn't feel like it was going to be a blowout there, at least on the first drive. The Giants were moving the ball down the field, and they were down there on the Dallas 8 with a 3rd and 2 coming up. Everything from there was a complete disaster, though. Andrew Thomas gets called for a false start. Then on 3rd down, a bad snap gets recovered by Daniel Jones all the way back at the 27. So all of a sudden, it's a 45-yard field goal, and it ends up getting blocked, and it's returned all the way back for a touchdown. From there, things just kept getting worse and worse. 2 drives later, Saquon Barkley gets hit while trying to catch a pass. It pops up, and it's a pick 6. 2 drives later, another Daniel Jones interception. Then, with about 1 minute left in the half, the Giants are right there kicking at the Dallas 18, just trying to get some points on the board and have some kind of positive to hang their hat on, and it's missed wide left by Graham Gano. I mean, this one was over at the half. You could have packed it in and gone to bed. It was 26-0, but it didn't get better from there either. Dallas tacked on 2 more touchdowns in the second half, and the Giants still couldn't do anything right. One drive they had with about 11 minutes to go, Jones ended up hitting Isaiah Hodgkins for a big gain, and then of course, he fumbles at the end of it and Dallas recovers. Cooper Rush played from there on out, and for whatever reason, Daniel Jones stayed in and just continued to get beat up. I mean, Dallas hit him 12 times, they sacked him 7 times, and they picked him off twice. It was just a complete disaster. So is it time to worry? Can the Giants actually bounce back? Well, it's only week 1, but it does at least give some legitimacy to some of the big worries about the Giants this offseason. 2022 was a dream season for the Giants. They hadn't won a playoff game since that second Super Bowl win over the Patriots, so it'd been a while. They went 9-7-1, and they snuck into the postseason before beating the Vikings in the wild card round. It felt like that was absolutely the ceiling for them, though. They exceeded every expectation, and probably shouldn't have even gotten that far. The next week, of course, they got blown out by the Eagles, and that was that. And how realistic was it for the Giants to actually improve on last season? That literally meant a double-digit win season or an NFC championship appearance, and that's just not happening. Last year was year 1 under Brian Daboll, and he went on to win Coach of the Year, as he should have. Now, after 2 years, the 2 week 1s under Brian Daboll in New York have gone very, very differently. If you remember last season, the Giants won to start the season. It was the first time they had had a winning record at all since 2016, but it came in dramatic fashion. The Giants scored with a minute left, and instead of kicking the PAT to tie it, Daboll went for it. They got it and beat the Titans. That really did set the tone for a very good season, but even still, with good coaching, at the end of the day, the Giants just have an average roster. One of the biggest questions the Giants had this offseason was essentially who to pay. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley both had expiring deals, and they had to make a big decision. It goes without saying that the 2 real stars on the Giants are Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones. It was tough because obviously New York would be a hell of a lot worse without either one of them on the roster. The offense essentially ran through Barkley last year. He kind of did everything, rushed for 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns, and had 300 receiving yards. Still though, simply just because of his value as a running back, the Giants didn't want to give him a long-term deal. I know some people don't like that or whatever, but you also have to realize he's a running back and he only had like 600 total yards rushing and missed a ton of time over the 2 seasons before 2022. So in order to keep him in town, the Giants decided to franchise tag him. That led to some drama. He wanted a long-term, but eventually he did sign the franchise tag after New York added a signing bonus and some incentives. And then the big contract went to Daniel Jones. In today's age, that's just how it's going to go. The quarterback's going to get the big deal. Jones got a 4-year, $160 million deal. Now, if it doesn't work out and Jones sucks, there is an out in 2025 5. It'd only be a $22 million cap hit, so it's really not that bad. I think it's actually a pretty good move to tag Saquon and give Jones a deal to at least have a solid quarterback for the next 2 years. Neither one had a particularly good day on Sunday. Barkley just had 51 yards and then 12 receiving too. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones rushed for 43 yards on his own and then struggled through the air, just 15 of 28, 104 yards, 2 interceptions. They didn't look good, and maybe the Giants regress back to what we expected them to be last year. But really, the Giants' problems aren't Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones. Watching the Giants offense against Dallas, there were 2 big questions that kept popping up in my head. 1, how is this a wide receiver group in the NFL? And 2, could the offensive line legitimately be any worse? Either way, none of that bodes well for Daniel Jones. I think the Giants were really hoping that Darren Waller could kind of be that Travis Kelce piece. Like, even if your receivers do suck, at least you have a good tight end. Unfortunately for the Giants, he's not Travis Kelce. He was the Giants' top receiver in week 1, but that was only 36 yards. The wide receivers on the roster, they're just not very good. Isaiah Hodgins is technically the number 1. That's not pretty. The fumble after his long gain, that was his only catch of the game. Then the number 2 is Darius Slayton. He did have 700 yards a year ago, and he had just 15 in week 1. Then Paris Campbell is the 3. I mean, it's just a brutal starting group. The hope is probably that Wan'Dale Robinson or Jalen Hyatt can take over as a reliable receiver. Robinson didn't play too much as a rookie, and then Hyatt's a rookie now, so we'll see how that all shakes out. For as bad as the receivers were, it felt like the offensive line was far worse. The Giants have really been trying to build an offensive line for years, and it's just not working. Andrew Thomas is an all-pro, and he's supposed to be that one bright spot on the line, and he even had an off night. Evan Neal is still bad on the other side, and then the rest of the line is just completely uninspiring. Ben Bredesen and Mark Glowinski are the 2 guards. Bredesen started a good amount of games in New York last year, and then Glowinski started in almost every game a year ago. New York does also have a new center, John Michael Schmitz. No, not John Jingleheimer Schmidt, but he is a 2nd-round rookie, and he, of course, had that bad snap that really hurt the Giants on that first drive. The offense definitely did suck, but the fun news is that the defense sucked too, and the special teams as well. There were just no positives whatsoever. The Cowboys didn't end up having Tyler Smith at guard, and Tyron Smith is banged up. It didn't matter. The Giants couldn't get home and couldn't get stops on 3rd down. The penalties that just gifted Dallas easy first downs didn't exactly help either. Nothing went well for New York. Like, literally not a single thing. What matters now, though, is that the Giants don't let this define their season or completely fall apart. Luckily, the Giants have a good chance to get it right next week because they do play the Cardinals on the road. Arizona looked bad in week 1, didn't even score an offensive touchdown. It's a game that New York should win, and that should at least help swing some positive momentum. Still, there are some tough matchups for the Giants early this year. After Arizona, they go 49ers, Seahawks, Dolphins. Luckily, Seattle may not be as good as we thought just based on week 1, but San Francisco and Miami are not going to be easy games. The Giants just have kind of a rough path this year. Add in games against the Jets, Packers, and Patriots, plus 2 games against the Eagles, another against the Cowboys, and yeah, the Giants might have a rough year. New York really did play up to their ceiling last season, and this was going to be a year where they really had to prove themselves. So far, it's not looking good, but it's only week 1.